Dear church, today we continue our series highlighting young ministers by talking with Philip Jenkins. Hello and welcome to the Dear Church podcast. I'm your host, Chris McCurley. We are continuing our series where we're highlighting some of our younger ministers in the brotherhood, and I'm excited to have my good friend Philip Jenkins with me today. Philip, man, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, man. This is cool.
This is awesome. So I've told our audience in the past that we got so many young preachers and youth ministers and associate ministers in the brotherhood. It's hard to highlight them all. Obviously, I'll miss some, but I did want to get some of my buddies on here that I feel like really are enhancing the church. And I hear so much negativity about the church, and I'm sure you do as well. But one thing I've noticed in my travels and my connections that I have is that the church is in good hands. We've got some great young ministers that will take the baton and run with it. You're certainly one of those guys. Before we jump in, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, about your family, about the work there at Mount Juliet, and what's going on?
Hey, thank you for your kind words. I really appreciate that. It means a lot to
Sure.
me. So yeah, I'm Philip. Hi. I have a wife named Laura. I have a couple of kids, Lucas and Holly, third grade and second grade. So it's been a weird year. Of course, everybody probably says that about 2020, but it's been good though. We're making it okay. I know COVID is different, like state to state, county to county, church to church. It's different everywhere.
Sure.
But we're doing okay. I'm the youth minister at Mount Juliet Church of Christ. I've been here about 10 and a half years.
Wow.
So that's, I don't know, it's kind of like dog years, I guess. If you stay that long somewhere, I guess that's a kind of a rare thing.
Yeah.
And so, I feel very blessed to be here. I don't know. What else you want to know? That's a good start, maybe?
That is a good start. I mean, tell me what made you decide to go into ministry? Now, I should say this. For those who are tuning in that don't necessarily know, Philip is the son of Dale Jenkins and the nephew of Jeff Jenkins, and two men that I greatly admire and respect. So you came from a family of ministers, but what made you own that decision to decide to go into ministry?
Yeah, I should have mentioned that as I was introducing myself. I have a lot of ministers in my family.
Yes.
Both of my granddads, on my mom's side and my dad's dad, of course, Jerry Jenkins was his name.
Yes.
They're preachers. So yeah, I could just go down the line. Like it's a family tree with a lot of ministers in it. And my brother's a youth minister. So
yes.
It's kind of everywhere in our family, but I don't know. When I was young, I wanted to be in the NBA. That didn't work out. When I got a little older, I wanted to be on Saturday Night Live. That didn't work out. And so I don't know. You grow and your dreams change or whatever. But I always kind of thought I would do something in ministry, but I didn't really know what. I thought I would maybe do youth ministry for a couple of years and then preach after that. But it was one of those things when I started doing youth ministry, I fell in love with it, and I just never have had a strong desire to leave the world of youth work, and that's why I'm still here doing what I'm doing. I find a lot of joy in it.
Boy, yeah, I tell you, you aim high. I'll give you that. I mean, Saturday Night Live, NBA, you know. And then, of course, youth minister at Mount Juliet. All those are kind of on the same level. So, I mean, that's
something.
Yeah. So you kind of alluded to it. Let me ask you the next question. The follow-up to that is, do you see yourself doing something else in ministry? Is youth ministry kind of where you want to stick and land and stay? Or do you see yourself kind of eventually preaching? I mean, in your mind, how did you see all this working out?
Sure. I'm a weird dude, and I don't know. I feel like my personality and my gifts and my strengths really seem to fit in the world of youth ministry.
Yeah.
And I feel like when I was younger, like I guess I'm still kind of young, I guess, but when I was definitely younger, like coming out of college, um, I just felt like I connected a lot more with kids than with adults, and I don't, maybe I just never have grown up, but some of those strengths just seem to work well and click in the world of youth ministry. And I remember preaching, like the first church I worked at, I had a great relationship with the pulpit minister who was there. His name is Ed Slayton. He worked at Millview Church of Christ, and he was a great mentor to me.
Yeah.
But he was very, very open to, hey, why don't you preach, a couple of times a month, and as many times as I wanted to. He was so cool about that.
Yeah.
And I just remember learning a lot about the pulpit versus youth ministry and how different they can be. And I know that there's some similarities, but I feel comfortable. I feel like I'm at home, right where I am doing youth ministry. So I don't know when I'll leave that,
Yeah.
or if I'll leave that. It's just right now it seems to be working pretty well.
Well, we always say that you kind of grow out of youth ministry. I mean, I did youth ministry, and we kind of say that you grow out of it. But look at Jerry Elder. There are some guys that don't ever grow out of it and are still highly effective. Even we don't want to say Jerry's old, but the longer in the tooth that they get, they're still effective. Let me put it that
I'll
way.
say it. It's old.
Yeah, comes out of your mouth, not mine. So let me ask you this: has there been a point where you've ever questioned this decision? I mean, are you all in all the time, or has there ever been a point where you said, man, I don't know if I'm cut out for this, or if this is what I really want to do the rest of my life?
Man, I honestly, I've thought about this before, and I honestly can't think of a time.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing. The challenging thing, though, and I think this is probably anybody who's in ministry will understand this, what I'm about to say, but I think it's challenging to stand up in front of people every week and proclaim a perfect God and a perfect word, and knowing how imperfect you are.
I agree.
And that's that, I guess, that constant struggle of, like, every time you stand up, and I guess you're supposed to represent righteousness, and I don't always represent righteousness.
I agree. Me neither.
And that is one reason why ministry's hard, is because you know how imperfect you are.
Yeah, but isn't that the reason you're effective too? I mean, you may not want to admit it, but I think that's the reason you're effective as well, is because, you're genuine, you're authentic, because I think that represents all of us. I mean, I don't think of a preacher as an actor, and once you get in the pulpit, now you're shifting gears to, like an alter ego. You're Clark Kent and then you're Superman. I really respect those guys that are the same all the way around, and they're honest about who they are, and that's you. I mean, I think your effectiveness goes with your genuineness, and but I do hear what you're saying, because I struggle with that as well.
You got to stay humble, don't you?
You do, and so what has been the biggest challenge in ministry so far for you in these 10 years or so that you've done it? I know COVID right now is a big challenge, but what has been the biggest challenge for you?
The challenge nobody saw coming.
Right.
I guess just learning hard lessons. And a lot of times that comes from making mistakes.
Yeah.
I hate making mistakes, but I still make them. And sometimes you learn hard lessons from mistakes you've made. So that's no fun, but hopefully you learn from.
Right.
Another thing that I think is really hard is you deal with criticism.
Mm-hmm.
And that's,
nobody criticizes you though.
No. No. And I don't mean to make it sound like I get it all the time. I really don't.
Right.
But I feel very blessed. I don't deal with it as much as maybe I could, but that's a hard thing. And when people feel like they know how to do your job better than you do, and that's tough, and probably tough in any profession. Like if you walked up to a teacher at school and told them off, like exactly how you don't know how to do their job.
No, listen, I was a coach. So, I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
half the people think they can do your job. So,
exactly. And that's just hard. And
yeah,
it's part of life, I guess. You're going to deal with criticism no matter who you are.
I agree.
But in ministry, it can be tricky because it's not somebody you serve at the drive-through window and you don't see them again.
Right.
Somebody you're going to see the next day and that weekend, and you're gonna have to keep working with those people. So how do you deal with criticism in a loving way to where it continues, where you can have a relationship to build with these people?
Agreed. Yeah. And it's people in the church, and so you struggle even more with folks in the church that criticize, and especially if they don't handle the criticism well in the way that they deliver it. And you're like, but
You have to.
we're brothers and sisters in Christ, that makes it even more, that's an extra layer, I guess. So I was talking about this last week, and we were discussing COVID and all of that. And I said, one of the most difficult things that I think that has happened here at our congregation at Oldham Lane is it's been tough on me. I mean, it's tough standing up there and preaching to a camera and seeing an empty auditorium. I don't know where y'all are at right now, but we just went back to online only. COVID has swept through our congregation to where I don't know that there's anybody not untouched, either directly or indirectly. But then also our community is on the verge of another shutdown because of, being maxed out in the hospitals and things like that. So, but I still believe that as difficult as it's been for me and as frustrating as it's been for me, our youth minister, Blake Dozier, I think is dealing with the most, has the most difficulty dealing with it because you can't be with the kids. You don't get to see them on a regular basis. He says the Zoom meetings and stuff, they're good, but they're not great, and all that. I'd like to know your perspective because I look at Blake and I think, man, he's really got it tough because it's hard to keep connected with the kids at a time that's valuable, and they need connection in their junior high and high school days, and they need the other kids to connect with. And he said, it's really hard to figure out, how to earn your worth right now because, you're coming in and you're not really preparing like you did before, and you're not seeing the kids. What do you think about that? Is that kind of accurate?
Yeah, that's such a good thought. And so what I've had to do, and what everybody's had to do, is go, okay, how do I do my job right now?
Yeah.
It's not just how do I do my job. That's the bad way of thinking about it. Probably it's how can I reach people right now?
Sure.
How can I continue to minister and serve people? And so for me, it's I don't like to do the same thing twice, the same way twice. You know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
And so, in a way, this is kind of twisted, probably, but it's been kind of fun to rethink your approach and to rethink about. Okay, I'm always used to hosting big events, or I'm always used to planning this over here and this over here, and having encouraging. Let's have a huge turnout. And so kind of rethinking like, okay, who do we need to go visit?
Mm-hmm.
Who do I need to go check on? Thinking small, and not losing sight of the individual. And so that's been a really tricky, frustrating thing because you're right. We want to do things where we're around the kids all the time.
Yeah.
But, how can we do the best thing for the group and also the best thing for the individuals? And that's something that we always need to be thinking about. But when COVID hit, it made us think harder about it.
Yeah. Well, I know that there's some people that are watching and or listening that are maybe in youth work or they're looking for ideas. One of the things that I appreciate about you, Philip, is your creativity. You are one of the most creative persons that I've ever run into, and I try to be, but I could take some lessons from you. So just give us some examples of some things that you have done during this time of COVID in order to adapt and adjust. What are some of the cool things that y'all have done?
That's a cool, I appreciate the compliment.
Sure.
Something that I guess along the lines of thinking about the individual, we have student interns like our seniors in high school. We have two girls and a guy that right now 4 days a week they come in and they spend a couple of hours working on this and that. And something we've incorporated into our ministry this year is home visits. And so we'll take our little group, get on a bus and spread out on the bus, like 5 people on it, spread out.
Yeah.
And we'll drive out and say, okay, who do we need to go see today? And it might be somebody that hadn't been coming back to in person,
Right.
or maybe a guest who started coming, or maybe it's somebody who's had a really tough week. It could be anybody. And so today, for instance, there's a girl in our youth group whose mom, we found out today, has COVID.
Oh.
And also the little girl, her girl, it's her birthday.
Oh, wow.
And she's in the youth group. They're like, man, she can't do anything on her birthday. That's lame.
Yeah.
So we're going to go take her a cake, and
That's
just
awesome.
do something like that. So maybe that's a good example
Yeah.
of making the most of a bad situation.
I think that's a good way to put it. We have to find a way to make the best of a bad situation. And we did something here called Drive-By Fellowship, where you drive up and you catch people out in their yard, and you sit in the van or you sit in your vehicle, sometimes the church van or your vehicle, and just communicate with them. That worked pretty good. But what we have found, and I'm sure you guys have as well, that one of the biggest outcomes of COVID is the loss of connectivity. And how do you stay connected when you're not at the building week in, week out? And that's been the real challenge. I'm not saying that we've done it perfectly, but I think we've tried to come up with some ways to do that. I know you guys have as well. That's a great idea, taking them a cake. So that's awesome. Tell Phil, how many kids you have in your youth group? I know it's a large congregation. So how do you balance your workload? Because again, it's a big group. How do you balance family time, workload? I know your wife works at the church, doesn't she?
Yeah, she's a counselor, and she sees girls here a couple days a week.
Good. So how do you balance family time, work time, all that kind of stuff? And youth ministers a lot of times are seen as the event planner, and if you're the way that you prove your worth is spinning all the plates and doing a bunch of stuff. So how do you approach all that, and how do you keep balance?
I don't think I would be good at it, except in our first year of marriage.
Mm-hmm.
I had a wife that made sure I was good at it.
Good.
He let me know, like, hey, we need to spend time together, and just that's such a lame thing that my wife has to tell me that. But you learn those lessons in your first year of marriage. And
Sure.
so I learned that early on, and a rule that it's kind of like, I don't know, I heard about one time somebody saying you have like 10 commandments of marriage.
Uh-huh.
One of our commandments of marriage that I've always tried to abide by this rule, unless just something crazy happens. I try not to be gone back-to-back weekends.
Okay.
And so, it's in youth ministry, it's so easy to go, all right, we're going to do a retreat this weekend, and next weekend I'm going to go speak here, and the weekend after that we're going to get together and play laser tag. And it's just so easy to get into that rhythm.
It is.
And it's good to do stuff, it really is. But it's important for me to have the ski retreat one weekend, but the next weekend be home.
That is good.
The next weekend I might have a retreat, but the next weekend I'm going to be home. So I try not to ever break that rule, and there's probably exceptions to it, but that's one that I'm pretty strict about.
I like that. And I realize I'm interviewing you. You're not interviewing me. So excuse me for saying this and interjecting, I guess. But that's something that I have always done, and it caused some consternation early on. And it might still. I don't know. I think our folks here at Oldham Lane are so sweet and good to me that it doesn't. But Saturday's my day. I don't answer text. I don't answer the phone unless they leave a voicemail and it's urgent. I don't do anything really church related on Saturday. That's the one day that we are family, that we are together, we're doing something. Now, again, like you said, there are always extenuating circumstances. You got a funeral, you got a wedding or something like that. Obviously, that takes precedent. But I think learning to say no on Saturday has been a key to me, for me in my ministry.
And I'd also add too, I love what you said. I'd also add, like, getting to work on time and leaving work on time.
Yes.
Like, it's so easy I'm going to stay an extra 30 minutes. I'm going to finish this project. I'm going to stay an extra hour and make this visit or talk to this person or have this study. I try to leave the office at the same day every time, and your work's going to go home with you if you're in ministry.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
always work you can do, but I really try to stick by that rule too.
That's a good rule. So tell me, I know it's different every day. I know it's different now because of COVID, but in a normal season, what does your work week look like? I mean, I know it changes and it's, like an amoeba. It's always moving in different directions, but what does a typical work week look like for Philip Jenkins?
My phone just is going to ring during the interview.
If it's the president, you can answer it.
I just hung up on our secretary. Hear about that later. My office hours are Monday to Thursday, 9 to 4. Very flexible. If I need to step out and go make a visit, I can do that. Yep. On Tuesdays at 10 o'clock, we have I really love this. At Tuesdays at 10, we have a meeting where all of our ministers are there and our elders, and we call it Soul Focus.
Really? Your elders are there as well?
Yes. Well, any of them that can be.
That's great.
It's virtual, but from 10 to 11, it is a meeting where the only thing we do is focus on souls, who we need to check on, who we need to visit, who we need to encourage, who responded this week, who lost a loved one, who's in the hospital, who we need to check on. It's that kind of meeting where for an hour, we don't talk business. We just talk about souls and who we're going to reach. And so our elders will make phone calls and they'll say, hey, I'll check on that person. And hey, I'll see how they're doing. I'll handle that.
That's great.
That's an hour every week. There's the preparation for lessons. I like to work on a lot of different projects. And so I'll be working on a youth event or an activity or a class, but also like, hey, I had this idea for something that could help other youth ministers, or I had this idea that could help other students. I don't know. I'm always thinking along those lines too. I like to work on a lot of projects, and I probably get that honest. My dad, he is like he was ADD before everybody had ADD, and I probably from him. So I like to spin a lot of plates, and I don't know. I don't like to do the same thing every single day the same way. So that's me.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Your dad is that way. I mean, he absolutely is a plate spinner, and not that he's unproductive. He gets a lot done. Some people just spin the plates to look like they're busy. No, I mean, he accomplishes a lot. He's just got so many things in the hopper. I think
he would be hosting this podcast while playing Tetris and sending one of his 1,000 emails that he sends out a day. He would do that all at the same time.
Yeah.
While this was happening.
Yeah, that's not me. I admire that, but that's not me. Well, let me ask you this, Phil. What's the most, maybe that was the answer to my next question. What's the most valuable thing you've learned in ministry?
Oh, man.
How to play Tetris and do a podcast, right?
Yeah. That's a really hard question. The most valuable thing I've learned in ministry. I guess if I had to, I can't just choose like one thing, but
sure.
Something that I have learned is I think it's really important. If you build a ministry that's bigger than you are, it'll be a ministry that's bigger than you are.
I like that. And
if everything depends on me, that's not going to last very long.
Right.
If everything is everything in your ministry is built around you doing it, that's not very sustainable.
Right.
Because one day you're not going to be there. Yeah. And so how do you do that? And so that's something that I've really taken to heart and tried to build things with that model in mind, that it's not built on me. It needs to be built around others.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing I've learned. Another thing my dad always told me, and this was before I was a minister, he just always told me this growing up. And, if you're going to put like a quote next to my dad's life, like my life,
yeah,
it's be a leader. Like every day before I got out of the car to go to school, that was what he would say, hey, son, be a leader.
Yeah.
And that really impacted me.
That's awesome. Yeah. Man, I love your dad. So let me ask you this. How can my generation, even the generation before me, like your dad, even the generation above him, how can we help the generation behind us, you and others even younger? How can we help you guys succeed? What can we do to ensure success for you guys?
It's a good question. I think getting to know people,
Yeah.
getting to know younger guys. We're not going to be perfect. No generation's perfect. I mean,
Right.
you know that, but if you help each other, it works for every generation.
Right.
And that's the beauty of the church. The younger helping the older helping the younger. I mean, that's the way God intended it and the way God built it. And so we just listen to each other, be patient with each other, love each other, encourage each other, and pray for each other.
Yeah.
We'll be all right.
And I think we got to understand that every generation does things a little differently. And the message doesn't change, but there's a lot of different methods that do. And so every generation kind of puts their stamp on things. And certainly, the generation after me will do that. I've done that. What do you see as some of the things that maybe need to change, or maybe they don't need to change? Maybe nothing needs to change, but is there some things we need to tweak, or is there some adapting and adjusting that needs to happen in order to ensure the success of the church and that she stays relevant and keeps, moving ahead? What do you think about that?
I think that I mentioned it earlier, but I think that 2020 has caused us to reevaluate some things, and I think evaluating and reevaluating and rethinking things is so healthy. And I'm not talking about abandoning truth. I'm not talking about rethinking truth.
Sure.
I'm talking about rethinking approaches, and I think it's healthy to do that. If I was going to use like a secular analogy, and this one, like, people are going to stop listening to me after I say this. You think about an old coach, an old generation would be Nick Saban.
Yep.
And his kind of had an Achilles heel for a while of playing old football.
Yep.
And eventually he was like, all right, let's adapt.
Yeah.
And so now the offense is a lot more potent and the defense is completely different than how it used to be. And so, how did he change things? He recruited differently. He evaluated what he was doing and rethought it and thought, okay, let's tweak this and let's, in other words, let's stay relevant. And so
Yes.
in the church, we got to stay relevant by rethinking things and finding the right approaches. And 2020 has caused us to do that. And so, I think that we don't stay relevant by looking around per se.
Right.
Like, I don't think the answer is to always just look around. But I think it's not that we stay relevant by looking around. I think we stay relevant by being like our loving God.
Yeah.
And he is and he was and he always will be relevant. And so, what would Jesus be doing in this pandemic?
Yeah.
How would he be spending his time? What ministries would he be involved in, and that kind of stuff? I think that's what we got to figure out.
That's a great thought. What would Jesus do during the pandemic? I like that. As we kind of wind down here, Philip, tell me, I think I know the answer to this question, at least in part. Who have been the biggest influences in your life?
Well, yeah, I know where you're going there. Definitely parents. My mom and my dad have had a big influence on my life, and you got to point to them first. One of my first mentors in ministry was a guy named David Baker.
Okay.
And had a lot of influence on me, and a lot of the reason I'm in youth ministry is because of him. And another big name, a big mentor for me, is David Shannon.
I love David.
And he and I worked together at Mount Juliet for about 6 years, six and a half, maybe.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we worked together a long time, and love that guy, love the Shannons, and I've learned so much from David.
Yes.
And miss them dearly, but I know they're doing good things.
Yeah.
So,
I miss David. I told David was on this podcast not long ago, and I told David, I said, man, I'm so glad that you're doing what you're doing and that you're in the position you're in. But man, we need you in the pulpit too. It's kind of like, but he said he's getting some opportunities to do both. So that's good. So last thing, Philip, you did a book that I love, The Lunch Ladies. I want you to plug that. I want you to plug anything else you're working on. I want you to tell us how we can get the book and, kind of give us a brief synopsis of it too, but tell us where we can get it, how we can keep up with your ministry and keep in touch.
Hey, that's cool, man. Thank you. Thank you for liking the book.
Yes.
Reading the book. I've written 4 books, and I've got two more that I'm working on, and one that we just released last week. It's at the printer and it will go out this week.
Great.
That book is called Thought Garden, and it's a children's book.
Great.
About like teaching kids the importance of planting God's truth.
Yeah.
And the seed of God's truth in your mind, and making sure that those are the things that take root in your mind and not the things that like weeds,
sure, bad
kind of stuff. Anyway, so that's something going on. But The Lunch Ladies, man, that book it's my heart.
Yes.
I love that ministry. It's a book about it's kind of a story, but it's also a hey, here's what God did through this story, and here's how this story can bless you. But basically, we had a group of teens that really got tired of watching people hurt spiritually and nobody doing anything about it.
Yeah.
And this little group of high school kids decided to really take seriously this idea of everybody who comes through the doors of our church building, we're going to show them the love of God. And we're going to make sure nobody gets overlooked or ignored.
Wow!
And so that's the story of the Lunch Ladies, and it's a story that started a ministry, and the Lunch Ladies ministry is something that at Mount Juliet that's been going for since 2012, so about 8 years now, and we continue to meet every single week to think about who can we reach out to and who can we encourage, and God has done some amazing things through that ministry. I'm not sure if I did a good job really plugging the book.
No, that's great.
Ministry, but the book is a story about how that started and a fire that was lit in our group. And maybe if you read the book, a fire will be lit in you, sure, and maybe you can do something similar. So,
and I guess we find it Amazon, where?
You can get it on Amazon, or you can talk to me and I'll get it to you either way.
Awesome. And I do want to tell our viewers and listeners that if you have a question about today's podcast or a comment, if you have a question specifically for Philip, we'll make sure that he gets it, and I'm sure he would be glad to answer your comment or question. And just email me at chris.mccurley@rippleoflight.com, and we love to hear from our subscribers, and we'll approach any question that we can, and any comment we'd love to see. Philip, thank you so much, man. Appreciate you being here.
Man, thank you so much. This was fun. I really hope something here was helpful.
Oh, absolutely. I love you and your ministry. Thank you so much. And thank all of you for tuning in. I love you all as well. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. Sincerely, Chris.